1533, the death of Vasily III plunged the Russian state into chaos. As Grand Duke of Moscow, he controlled the country and its rival noble families. Ivan, his son and heir, was just 3 years old on his father's death. Ivan's mother, Elena, fought a desperate battle to be regent. In 5 years, she was dead, poisoned by the nobility. Ivan was an emotional wreck. He started to believe that God was saving him. But Ivan was also developing sadistic interests. Fascinated by torture, he tore the feathers from birds and slit their stomachs. His father had been called Grand Duke. Ivan demanded to be crowned Tsar. He would take a Russian bride, chosen in a national virgin contest. Girls over the age of 12 were paraded in front of him. Ivan chose Anastasia Romanov. The marriage was a happy one for Ivan and for Russia. For a while, his new Tsarina would hold Ivan's cruelty in check. His beloved Anastasia died in mysterious circumstances. She was 27 years old. Ivan went mad with grief. If God could take Anastasia, he must be cruel and irrational. Ivan would rule in the same way. Years of repressed anger and hatred erupted as Ivan's old cruelty resurfaced. In the terrible revenge that followed, whole families were wiped out, from elderly women to 12-year-old boys. Many of the nobility had fought loyally in the Tsar's armies. They were tortured and killed alongside their children. Ivan would marry 7 more times, but never again find peace. Despite being feared at every level of society, Ivan the Terrible had pulled Russia together by the force of his will. Ivan was now indispensable. Throughout his life, he was in agony. Seeking relief, he turned to mercury. It made him violent and unpredictable. Ivan demanded absolute power to purge his nation without judgment or criticism from anyone. Claiming authority above the church, Ivan was now the sole interpreter and executor of the will of God. He created his own elite terror force, the Oprichniki, men in black. Everything about the Oprichniki was calculated to create fear. Dressed in black, they rode black horses decked out in dogs' heads. They carried brooms, symbolizing their intent to sweep away. Many were criminals, hand-picked by Ivan for their cruelty. Up to 10,000 died at the hands of Ivan's terror police. Many more were forcibly relocated, their land seized and settled by the Oprichniki themselves. The Tsar visited the dungeons for the afternoon's executions. Here, in his personal torture chamber, Ivan reconstructed hell. In the evenings, his men would bring in peasant girls. There was no religious justification for Ivan's treatment of them. They were whipped, raped, and used for target practice, removing ribs with red-hot pincers. One former advisor was hanged by his feet, while Ivan and his men took turns to hack off pieces of flesh. Ivan was merciless with opposition. In a 5-week orgy of violence, Ivan oversaw the torture of more than 15,000 people. Men, women, and children were tortured and mutilated. They were tied to sleighs and driven into the Volca River. Moscow did not escape either. Ivan was convinced of a wide-scale conspiracy and ordered mass trials. Executions were carried out in Red Square beneath the domes of Ivan's brand new cathedral. Ivan devised punishments for those brought before him. They erected 17 gallows and an enormous cauldron. Terrified Muscovites were rounded up to witness a gruesome bloodbath. A witness described how he left beaming with contentment.
Mounting a horse and brandishing a spear, he charged and ran people through while his son watched the entertainment.
Even Ivan's family were not safe. In a violent quarrel with his favorite son and heir, Ivan struck out with his staff, piercing the prince's skull. His final years were consumed by guilt and grief. Finally, as death approached, he had himself rechristened as a monk. Ivan died at the age of 54, collapsing during a game of chess. He was buried in his monk's habit in a final effort to bring forgiveness. Ivan had destroyed his dynasty and left his administration in chaos. Moscow faced political and economic ruin. Ivan had extended his country, but left it weak, divided and afraid. Many wondered whether Russia would survive. Ivan the Terrible waged a 40-year war on his own country. Thousands were slaughtered. He devised cruel, sadistic punishments in his personal torture chamber. He watched prisoners flayed, boiled, and even fried. Ivan destroyed villages, towns, and an entire city. He stabbed his son to death in a fit of rage. All in the name of God.